Hello, coders. Today we're going to be talking about a balanced view as to how AI is impacting junior web developers. I'm going to talk about the positives, I'm going to talk about the negatives. Now, we obviously are still in this AI boom, if you want to call it. So there really isn't like a definitive answer to these things. However, we have noticed certain movements in the industry already. For example, Salesforce, they're now using AI more than hiring. So there's there's all sorts of things that are happening to the industry, and I just wanted to have a couple of minutes here of just sort of evaluating where junior developers, what impacts are the junior developers are facing. I've been a developer myself for, over 20 years, and I think I would struggle myself getting my head around the landscape as a junior developer coming into this industry. What does AI mean to me, and how could I use AI to my advantage, and I shouldn't and shouldn't expect with AI. And I think we're in a good place at the minute with ChatGPT, the last version that came out. We can now do a kind of reflection piece. How has AI changed the industry? So, anyway, as a junior developer, I'll talk a bit about my experience when I was a junior developer and maybe how I would change my route, shall we say. With junior developers, the world is basically there to be absorbed in terms of the development ecosystem. You are completely green, and there are things that you didn't even know existed. There are a lot of things that you didn't even know existed. The more you become a senior developer, the more years you put on, the more things you hear about but perhaps don't use, but you kind of know what they are, sort of. For example, you'll become aware of DevOps, you'll become aware of Ansible and Docker and Kubernetes. You may not use them, but you'll have an understanding as to why they're there. And if you are a front end of dev, you'll be aware of other frameworks that you won't particularly use, but you'll be aware of them. As a junior developer, completely green, completely fresh to the industry, you have no idea what VTIS versus Next.js versus React versus Vue, right? You may just have some form of understanding of what is JavaScript or what is HTML, CSS. And so with AI, you now have this tool that can harness and access every piece of every question that software developers ever had up till now, and you'll have the answer straight away. So there is an accelerated level of learning, which is both really insightful, but also incredibly terrifying because suddenly you have access to all the knowledge of software development through a chatbot. Now, when I was a junior developer, one of the biggest challenges that I faced was actually trying to find the source of truth in terms of what forum do I use, what Stack Overflow post should I read, and also what is Stack Overflow, and where are these forums, and who should I be listening to, and also how do I actually come up with the question that is going to solve this problem that I'm facing. And that in itself is a massive skill. We're now turning this into prompts, right? Writing prompts. How do you ask AI a question? So we now have this chatbot, which is the window to all font of knowledge of software development that we are aware of today. And that is something that I never had, and other developers, junior developers, when I was a junior developer, never had either. We had to hunt for this stuff. We had to go through the Google pages. We had to literally hunt for all of the information ourselves, and that would take a long time. And that actually refined our skills as to what questions we should be asking, what things in the error message we should be looking out for, and it made us remember it, because it was such a difficult process to get to the answer, and we had to refine and refine and refine our own issues. That in itself was a learning journey. And so there is a pro and a con here. Again, there is this massive open window that junior developers can now type into a chatbot and get an answer back. That is accelerated learning, but on the flip side, you lose the journey of discovery. So, for example, if I had an error message in, say, I don't know, an internal server error message, reading how to actually read and process the stack trace. What is a stack trace? You know, all of those questions I would have as a junior developer. And now I can just put the error message into a chatbot, and then it will come back with not only what the error message is, how I got the error message, but also how to fix it, and probably some form of solution that I can just copy and paste in, and there we go. So it's a pro and a con. The accelerated learning is a pro and a con for skills development. So it offers code suggestions, explanations, and also best practices in real time. And it does feed into this copy paste kind of situation, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So that not only do we have accelerated learning and skills development, but we also have increased productivity, right? So if AI can then automate certain things like boilerplate tasks, debugging, testing, coming up with proof of concepts, if it can do that, then we have an accelerated productivity. But the thing is that when you're a junior developer, you have to understand what those boilerplates do. You have to understand what you're actually testing. If you're asking an AI to build you a system, or build you a page, or build you a feature, and then you're asking AI to test that feature, then your understanding of what that feature actually is and how it's actually being put together is very limited, very low, because all you're doing is asking for it to be built. You know, and so if it goes wrong, or if you want to update it and upgrade it and change it, you have to have the knowledge yourself as to how that was built. So it's a pro and a con. Thank you ever so much for joining. I really do appreciate that. Thank you, Noor. Thank you, Beeb. Thank you, New Generation and Santos, everyone who's joined. Paul Potter, Gabrielle. Thank you ever so much for joining, everyone. I appreciate that so much. Yeah, so we've got increased accelerated learning, and we've got increased productivity, right? Both are double-edged swords. And it's a different game when you're a junior developer versus a senior developer, I feel, because senior developers will use AI differently to junior developers. We are aware of what we do know and what we don't know. As a junior developer, there is a lot more that you don't know than you do know. And I don't want to come across nasty, but that's just the way it is, right? And so as a senior developer, when we get a response from AI, we're able to read the response, and a lot of the times it isn't what we want. And so we have to go through that process of refining the prompt so it produces the thing that we want. Sometimes it's easier for us to just write the damn code rather than actually ask AI to do it, right? Whereas a junior developer, there is this notion of, you believe the system, you believe that what is coming back is actually correct. And it's that false belief of sure, I'm asking the internet how to do this thing. Of course it's going to come back with the right response. There is moving away from it, moving away from software development now. I do feel, and this is just my own opinion I'm throwing in here, I do feel that when people start medically diagnosing themselves using AI, they're going to trust AI far more than they're going to trust a doctor, you know, for certain things, which is a bit of a danger. And with going back to the software development, when we're asking AI, you know, what is this error? How do we solve this thing? Blah, 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 blah. We're going to be trusting AI more than we're trusting ourselves and other members of the team, which I think is dangerous. But anyway, bringing it back down to the point of this is talking about the impacts of AI with junior developers. So the other thing is you have immediate access to better tools and resources straight off the bat. Straight off the bat, you are able to not only use AI as it used to be done through a little chat GPT thing, but you're actually now able to use AI within the IDE, which is such a change. It's a gear change in the last few years that these AIs are actually now being embedded in the actual tools that we use, which is amazing. And that is becoming more of a trend. The more tools we use, the more, or the tools that we use will now have AI in them, whether we like them or not. And say, for example, when you're using Copilot, it will suggest you the things, even if you've accepted and you said, yeah, I'm going to go for Copilot, fine. It will suggest you things even if you don't want them to be suggested, right? So, for example, you just have to press tab and then it'll predict what you're going to write next, right? It'll predict what the next function it will be. You just have to write a comment and it'll just create the thing, okay? So that tooling was never, ever available as a junior developer when I was a junior developer. In fact, the whole IntelliJ stuff, the whole autocomplete stuff was never a thing when I was a junior developer. This is how old I am, right? And that was a huge game changer when it came in, because it was almost like it was, well, I suppose it was reading your previous code, it was reading what was in your classes and your objects and your methods, and it knew what parameters you could use and arguments and all of that stuff, and it felt like complete and utter magic. Obviously, it's looking upon the code that you have already written. This is the other way around. It's actually reading what you've written in terms of a comment and then suggesting the code for you. And all you have to do is press tab, and then suddenly it's in there. Like, that is mad. That is an absolute magical gift. And I do believe that whether you like it or not, you have to use AI now. It is becoming an expectation that developers have some form of AI that they are using on a daily basis, and there is less of this camp of I'm against AI or I'm with AI, you know, is in software development. And so as a junior developer, you have to have some form of AI experience, but you have to be very careful when you do it. So we've talked about accelerated learning, we've talked about increased productivity, we've talked about access to the better tools and the resources. By the way, I'm going to put all this on a blog post and put this to howtocodewell.net later on, probably this weekend. But I'm reading, I've got my laptop in front of me, I'm reading like a list that I've produced. Because I was thinking, well, how as a junior developer do you actually now secure a place in the industry when you're up against not only other junior developers who perhaps know more than you, but also AI? Like, when you hear about companies who are getting rid of their junior developers and replacing them with just AI and keeping their senior developers, then how on earth can you become a junior developer that goes to a senior developer? That's just terrifying. But, you know, that's worst case scenario. So, okay, accelerate learning, increase productivity, access to better tools and resources. There is also a low barrier of entry, right? Everybody has ChatGPT. Everybody has these tools embedded in the IDE. You know, everybody is on the same level, that in terms of like what they can access now, which is crazy. It's amazing, and the fact that these chat bots are freely available is amazing. There's stuff behind paywalls, but there is obviously a set amount of messages that you can ask before you get charged, and that is fantastic. The big thing though, the big positive that I think that junior developers should really lean into is the fact that they have now the exposure to industry standards from the get-go. So many of these tools, these AI tools, they do encourage best practices, which is great. And as a junior developer coming into this industry, you're not going to necessarily be aware of all of the best practices. You'll write code, it's going to be a total mess, but it works. And for me, it was a big gear change when I realized, when I learnt that actually the code that I write, even if it's a complete and utter mess, and even if it does work, is not going to be approved by someone on the team because it's not meeting best practices. And so you have to learn what those best practices are. Now, of course, this is very different for whatever you're writing, what kind of tools you're using, and whether you've got more things to do with security versus just code formatting, right? Or whether you're using certain design patterns and how to use those properly. So, or just writing what is semantic HTML and accessibility, performance and optimizations, and all of those kind of crazy things that as a junior developer you're suddenly exposed to all of this information. But you can use AI to analyze your own code, to come up with best practices, and to suggest and explain how your code can be improved. So they are some of the impacts that sorry, my dogs are on the walk. Where are you guys going? You getting bored? So this is some of the things that are impacts to junior developers. Now there are some negatives, right, that junior developers need to be aware of, and actually it's not just for junior developers, it's also for seniors as well. And you need to really kind of do some reflection as to how you are using AI, regardless of how, who you are and what skill level you are. I think it's always important to have a reevaluation of, am I using AI in the best possible way? Hi, Jill. Hi, Zuko. Hello, everybody who's joined. I really do appreciate that. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. It's great to have you all here. Do let me know if you've got any questions. If you are a junior developer, if you've got a senior or you are a senior developer and you have used AI in a different way, or you've got any advice that you want to give to the community, then do let me know. Put that in the comments, and I'll see if I can mention them. I do appreciate that. Thank you ever so much, everybody. So let's talk about some negative impacts. All right, some negative. I'm going to slurp some tea. Bear with me a minute. This is going to go cold otherwise. Massive mug. Good pot of tea in the morning. Tea alarm, everyone. Got to be aware of that. Anyway, so negative impacts for the junior devs or any devs in AI. So over-reliance on AI. You ask AI a question, it pops out with an answer. You don't even bother reading the explanation, but you just copy and paste that in. In fact, with the integration of in IDEs, there is the temptation of just committing the code in, and in fact, it gives you a button in VS Code to do that. You've asked AI a question, it's come up with a solution, and you can just press a button, and suddenly it's in there. And then there we go. You then commit that up and push that up without even thinking about what it is that you've even been given as a solution. That is terrifying, and we're seeing all sorts of problems with that, where people are vibe coding solutions pushing it up to production, to completely unsecure, not following any form of like security best practices or anything like that. Because what the problem is, you've asked ChatGPT or Claude or something, and you haven't given it enough context, and you just expect that it's going to work because you're trusting the AI more than you're trusting yourself. Okay, developers may then lean heavily on AI, leading to a poor understanding of core concepts of how the code actually works. So this is like, so you are just using whatever AI has responded to you, and you're not even aware of what that thing is, right? If you're saying, can you fix this bug, without actually understanding what the bug is, right? So I'm a contractor, and one of the things that I've done previously as a big in big companies is have a piece of time where bugs come in. We have to do some investigation. We have to explain what that bug is. We have to then analyze the impact that that's having across our customer base, our user base. We have to do all sorts of like you know, error rate analysis. We have to then work back, how was this bug introduced? We then have to come up with solutions. And as I mentioned in the previous stream, there is going to be more than one solution to your problem often. And that may require getting a team together, getting some developers together to bounce ideas off of each other. All of that process gets lost when you're just asking AI to fix your problem, because it might come back with the solution, but it may not be aware of the full context, the full impact that that problem is having on your user base, on your customers. And so there is a danger. There is a danger of just relying on AI to solve all the problems that AI is actually creating. And it's not actually AI creating those problems, it's because you have asked AI to build the thing, to fix the thing, and to test the thing, and you're just accepting what AI has come back to you with, which is a danger. Now, another issue that is very scary with AI, for junior developers at least, is having fewer entry level opportunities coming in, right? Because we are hearing now that companies are getting rid of their junior developers in favor of using AI, and having senior developers ask to analyze the response of AI, which, if I was a junior developer and I heard that, that would scare the bejesus out of me, because that is, that's, you're using a machine to do my job. Now, this can go into one or two ways, right? So the first way, which is the negative way, is the fact that this is going to happen more and more and more, and the chances of getting a junior developer position is going to be fewer and fewer and fewer. However, I do not believe that that is going to be the thing. I think that we're going to feel a bit of pain for the first few years, couple of years on, but then I think we're going to regress back to bringing junior developers on board, because of a lot of these problems that I've been talking about, where people are using over-reliance on AI. The senior developers who think they're senior developers are actually going to have a very humbling moment when they are relying on AI, committing the AI code, then realizing that that's a big mistake, and then having to, pedal backwards. And I also think that we are missing creativity. We are missing the fact that junior developers who come into our teams, they actually bring with them a big element of creativity, a big element of just being hungry to learn, of improving. And you can only do so much with a small amount of senior developers. You have to have multiple brains in the room. You have to have people who are able to challenge your solutions. You have to have people who have this creative experience, right? So junior developers will be junior developers for maybe several years, and in that period of time they'll have experience with other projects, they'll have experience with other clients, they'll have experience with other frameworks, with other things, right? And when you hire someone, you're not just hiring someone for the fact that they're able to increase your productivity over time, but you're also hiring them for the experience that they've had previously. And you're gonna lose that by just reducing the amount of junior developers that you actually bring onto the team. You also reduce the amount of people that are aware of how your business, how your company actually works. Because let's face it, AI will only know so much about the business that you're dealing with, and business has yet to use AI in the same way that us coders use AI, right? So knowing the business domain, knowing the business context, knowing the business logic, knowing the business requirements, knowing the business going forward, what the features are, what the roadmap is, right? All of that stuff you can give to a junior developer as knowledge, and they are aware of that. So when they are building the thing, yes, they may not be as fast as a senior developer, but they have that knowledge instilled in them, and that will drive their decision process when they are actually writing the code out, because they've heard in a meeting that the business is going in this direction. They've heard in a meeting that actually they need to be more reliant on, I don't know, some form of A/B testing that came through that said that they should be going in this direction rather than the other direction. You can't really digest all of that and give it to AI, you know, in the same way that you can just give it to a human. The element, it's really difficult for me to kind of wrap this into some sort of like pretty parcel here, but you do lose creativity when you are using AI, in the fact that you are not able to be aware of the context that you already are, that you've been told, right? The company is going in this direction, the business is going into this direction. The reason why we want to use this feature is because we've realized that there are more users doing this than that, that kind of thing. It's very difficult to distill all that and put that and just send that off to AI. And that does get reflected in the code that we write. It's a very, I'm going to see if I can sort of parcel that up better, maybe, because I know that I've probably just waffled on there and I've not made much sense. But as a contractor, I've certainly seen that there is a lot of business decision that the developers are aware of, and that is the driving force of the code that they write, in the way in which they write it. And AI is being used as a fix this problem, write this code, blah, blah, blah. Whereas the developers are more aware of why the code is being written, how the code is going to integrate with other features and other business decisions that we are yet to produce on the roadmap, right? But they're on the roadmap because we have been part of that creative process of coming up with the features that are yet to be developed. Okay, so anyway, so that's why I think that right now we may see fewer entry-level positions for junior developers, but that's why I don't believe that that's going to be a trend. I think that companies will realize that actually we do need junior developers, and we also need more senior developers. Yeah, so let's talk about. I've kind of branded all the companies with one big brush, and I think that's a bad idea. We'll see that more in the bigger companies, I think. The smaller companies who have a small team of developers, they're going to treat AI differently, and they're going to treat junior developers who use AI differently, I think. because they don't have really a lot of room to maneuver, right? Because the bigger companies, they can do a decision. They can say, hey, this year we're just not going to hire any more junior developers, and we're just going to use AI, right? If that then turns out to be a bad decision, then because they're so big, they can swallow that mistake. Smaller companies can't. Smaller companies can't. And so I think the smaller companies will still keep junior developers on, A, because they are cheaper than senior developers, and B, because they need to have that creative input. Perhaps they have an idea as to where the business wants to go, but they need to have other developers to shape those ideas, those future features coming through. And so I think there'll be more opportunity in smaller companies for junior developers, which is basically where in my opinion, junior developers should be, right? Because they actually start, if they're working in a smaller team, they are more of an important asset because the team is so small than a bigger team where you can actually sort of disappear in the team, over time if you're not careful. But that's a whole different thing. Okay, so the other problem, I want to move away from this because I can see that this is going into all sorts of different avenues. The other issue that I see AI having is with shallower problem solving skills. So again, this is a very difficult thing for me to shape. Over my 20 odd years, my problem solving skills have improved and been manipulated by the challenges that I've faced, by the meetings that I've been in, by having the chats with the developers and the conversations that I've had. And every project as a contractor is so different. Every challenge is so different. And also, every project management style is different, right? So the human interaction is different. But with AI, because you're getting instant answers with auto-complete suggestions, there is a danger that us developers lose the ability to have a deep and meaningful, thoughtful troubleshooting process. And that is, it's building that critical thinking through trial and error that we are going to lose out when we are using AI, because we are literally asking, what is this problem? Give me a solution. And I remember, I still do it. I still do this a lot. When we trial and error a problem, when we start reducing down this huge problem into smaller little things, when there's an error, for example, on the screen, and we are reducing it down to the actual line number and then reducing it down to this variable that's wrong, we've gone through so many different stages of realization to get to that point. And in doing so, we have learned so much more that we probably didn't necessarily need to learn in order to get to that point. Like, for example, I remember quite recently there was an issue on my site, and I didn't know whether it was an issue with Nginx. I didn't know whether it was an issue with PHP. I didn't know whether it was a caching issue. I had no idea. It was an issue because it was this thing that only happened at certain times. And so you had to then think about, well, let's think about the pattern of this issue. What is causing this issue? What isn't causing this issue? Is there a pattern to this? And then from that, can I create a test that replicates this issue? And then from that, you start massaging the error, start trying to replicate the error yourself, and then you start thinking, actually, no, it's got nothing to do with Nginx. So I'm just, that's gone. Okay, so now we're reducing the pool of possible problems that this could be the reason why this is the issue. And you start reducing that down and you start crossing that off. No, it's not that. Okay, no, it's not that. No, it's not that. And you reduce and you reduce and reduce. And then you find out that actually it's got nothing to do with the other things that you thought it may have, but you've learnt a little bit about those things. And also when you have problems that are hiding other problems, right? So, okay, I've solved this issue with, I don't know, an Nginx issue, but actually that was hiding another issue that was actually also causing that issue. So, woo, and then race conditions and all of that jazz. You lose the deeper understanding and deeper learning. You lose that journey of discovery when you're just asking a chatbot, can you solve this issue? And then you're just committing that code straight away. So there is there is a danger there. The other one is for increased competition in the industry. I'm going to slurp a little bit more of my tea. Thank you also for much. Thank you for joining, Will. Thank you very much. N Star in the end. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for joining. Hello. Tea is getting colder by the minute. Thank you. Thank you ever so much for joining. I really do appreciate this. Thank you very much, everyone. Hello, everybody. So, competition in the industry. Let's talk about that. Yes, because if you're a junior developer and you're using AI, be sure that be aware that everybody else is using AI. So I had this issue when I came out of university, and I remember speaking to a recruitment agent over the phone, and he basically just said, look, you're in a massive ocean here. You've just come out of a university with a degree that so many other people have. Your CV is incredibly limited because you have only done university and college. Yes, I had done some freelance work on the side, but there's no big brand names that I can just throw around. So you were up against it. You were up against it, and there were for one of you there was thousands of other people, right? And that was a massive challenge. I actually remember writing like 50, 60, 70 job applications. I remember writing so many different things, and it was so disheartening to let's just say about 80% never actually responded. Yeah, and you get that sinking feeling of, oh, I've done all of the years of study, all of the years of training. I'm hungry to get into this industry, but nobody wants me. And that is a horrible feeling to have as someone who really wants to crack into the industry. And I was actually following up on my applications to a lot of these companies and asking them, like, please just have the decency to say that, I didn't get it. It was frustrating. Anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about how AI is impacting competition for junior developers who are yet to get onto the industry. This is a massive challenge, and something that I certainly feel strongly about. So, because the barrier of entry is lower, right? Because Copilot is in your VS Code, because AI is in your editor, and that all you have to do is ask a chat bot for a solution, or to build you a thing that you can just put on your CV. It's such a challenge to stick out of the sea of everybody else, because everybody else has the same ability as you, because they have has the same capability as you, because they have the same tooling as you. And the thing that really helped me out was to become more of a freelancer before I became a junior. So having the actual ability to say, well, actually, no, I have been paid for some work. And a lot of it I had to sort of eat, in the sense of like the cost was very low. My time wasn't charged a lot. I was doing it because I wanted to have that line item in the CV, not because I wanted a payout, right? And so if you're able to have that on your CV compared to other people, other junior developers who don't have that, then that is a win. And also, I wouldn't get too disheartened. I wouldn't. College and university isn't for everybody, but it's certainly a good thing to have on your CV. The thing is, when you are completely green to the industry and you are trying to break into the industry, having as many things that actually have meaning on your CV is really important. The more senior you get, the less that degree actually matters, the less that college diploma matters, the less the first ever freelance gig matters, okay? Because your future employers aren't going to be, they're going to be more concerned with what it is that you've recently done compared to how you actually got into the industry. Okay, so the more senior you go, the less impact that diploma degree will actually have to your hiring skills. However, we're talking about people getting into the industry from the get-go. And so you need to have that. I see it like you're trying to kick a door down. You're trying to kick that industry door down and enter that door. The more power you can put behind that kick, I do karate, so I'm going to use that analogy. The more thrust that you can do to that door, to that punching bag, to that kick shield, the more the employers are going to go, oh, actually, yeah, that's a candidate that is worthy of our application process because they've done this, 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 and this. And we can see that they are hungry for it. They haven't just done a degree or a diploma and they are just, they've just given you a bulk standard CV which just says I've done a degree or a diploma. They've actually done something with it. They've actually done something with that. And so it's a bit of a trial by fire, because you have to, like, you as you're applying for jobs, you have to also have freelance gigs. And the reason why they're freelance gigs is because they're temporary, right? They're temporary stuff. And we're talking about, your local business. We're talking about, setting up your web page for your mum, or, who sells things, or your local football team, or something like that. Something that you can actually put a URL to say, hey, I've actually used my skills that I've learned as a degree, in a degree or a diploma, and I've actually built something that the world can see, right? So that's how I would deal with that. And I wouldn't use vibe coding as a means of just producing 10 things, right? So yeah, let's see. I'm going to grab some tea. Sorry, there is more to this. Hey Claire, thank you for joining. I really do appreciate everybody from saying hello. I appreciate that. For some reason, I can't see the messages. I don't see that. Meh. Okay, I'm still learning on this whole TikTok thing. I used to do podcasts, and I used to do live streams on Twitch. I still do sometimes live coding on Twitch. There are so many tools that I need to learn. JJ, Jujutsu, the difference between the competitor to VS Code, or to VS Code. What am I talking about? Git. So a new way of version control system. That's why I said VCS, version control system. And I'm personally leveling up my skills in React, and I wouldn't mind doing some live coding on that too, and other bits and pieces. But anyway, the the increased competition is an issue. There's also the risk of skill stagnation as well. So if a developer relies really early on in their career to AI, then they will skip, unfortunately, the essentials, the fundamentals of what programming actually is, of knowing the basics of, if statements, control flows, essentially, if statements, operators, switch statements, returning early, how to produce clean code, all of that stuff. They will not be aware of because they've been relying on the solutions that AI have been giving them, and so they'll skip the very early stages. And this I think could become a problem going forward in life, is the fact that we may have a lot of developers who consider themselves senior, but they no longer have the fundamentals because they've been relying on AI so much, you see. So I think that's a bit of a problem. Excuse me. I've got I think I might have a cold coming on. That's not good. If developers rely early on AI, then they may skip the learning essential skills of like optimization, the security, the architecture challenges, and they are harder to learn when you are later in your career. If you haven't learnt them at the start of the career, then it's going to be much harder for you to learn those going forward, because you have to unlearn all of the things that you've been relying on for AI. And that's going to be a challenge. And that is going to be incredibly obvious that you don't know those basic things at an interview. All right. So that's another thing that junior developers need to be aware of when they are dealing with this increased competition, is that they themselves must have the essentials down, the fundamentals down, which is why I recommend going to boot camps, colleges, universities, if you can, getting a course on the very fundamentals of what makes PHP, not JavaScript, how to deal with control flows, how to actually navigate and manipulate the logic of the code, how to do that. What is the difference between const, let, and var in variable assignment for JavaScript? When should you use a match statement versus a switch statement in PHP? What's the difference between a class and an object? How do you use interfaces? What is polymorphism? How do you use dependency injection? All of those things that junior developers need to be aware of. They can't just ask AI, and not take on board what the solution is or what the response is. We have to have those in memory ourselves. Okay, so the next part of this, I want to talk about how to use AI wisely as a junior developer. So, I mean, I've touched on a couple of these points, but the first one is to treat AI as a guide and not as a crutch, not as a thing that is going to hold everything together, but as a guide. Use it as a means of understanding. It's not just a tool that you can use for just copy and pasting. It is a suggestion engine. It is not the results engine, right? It is suggesting you the solution. It is suggesting what that problem could be. You read it, you absorb that more than once. It is a suggestion. You don't have to just do whatever AI tells you to do, right? So, and then also you are asking AI to explain the solution that it's come up with. So ask AI, why did you use this thing here? Why did you use, say, use effect here? Why did you use set state? Why did you use this method of encapsulation? Why did you use this? Why didn't you do? And also, why didn't you do the dependency injection here? And how does this work? So you're having a conversation with AI. you've asked it to solve this problem, but you're actually asking AI to explain what the problem actually is in more detail and why it's using certain things. And if you're seeing code that it's producing that you're not actually understanding, and you've never seen that code before, you've never seen that function before, you've never seen that that architecture before. If it's PHP, it might be coming back with, I don't know, a way of using an array function that you've never even seen before. If you're using JavaScript, it could be using the filter function that you've never used before. It could be using closures that you've never seen before. It could be using all sorts of different things. Ask AI to explain what they are, because AI will just assume that you know what it's talking about. And if you're a junior developer and you don't know those things, then that's a problem, man. That's a problem, because all you're doing is copying and pasting and putting that in, which isn't good. Hey QQ, hope you're well. Hope everybody's well. So also, in doing that, you're reverse engineering the AI output. So you're saying, like, after the solution that AI has been given to you, you're then studying what that solution is. And you can actually say that this is study time as well as actually development time. You can say, like, hey, I'm going to ask AI to solve all of these problems, and that's going to be the thing. Sorry, my dog wants to say hello. Hello, doggy. Let's just, can I? No, I can't. I wanted to show you the doggy. Can I show you the doggy? The doggies. The doggies are going to say hello. There's one. There's two. So they're up and moving. So you are saying to AI, like, solve me this problem, and then you perhaps don't understand the problem, right? You can then later on go back through your chat history and come on, Goose, and actually, study that. You may have solved the problem. You may have used what AI has done to solve that issue, but if you don't understand what that solution was, then say, okay, for the next, that's the thing that's worked, but in the next hour, I'm actually going to stop productivity, and I'm going to learn what that actually means. And that takes a lot of discipline, a lot of self-discipline. Oh, Goose, you are funny. Goose the dog. Hello. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. So you're reversing AI. You're reversing the AI output. Hey S, thank you for joining. There's also back to the discipline part. Setting yourself no AI zones. So you're saying, okay, in the morning I'm going to use AI. Right, I'm going to use AI. I'm going to build this thing, and I'm going to put it on my CV. Yeah, great, fine. But actually, in the afternoon, I'm not going to use AI whatsoever, and I am going to do the next feature for this thing, right? Because I want to learn, and I want to reinforce my muscle memory skills, and I don't want to be influenced by AI when I'm doing this. And so this sharpens up your problem solving skills. This goes down the avenue that I was mentioning beforehand of your critical thinking, your trial and error, your trying to engage with the community to find out whether they've got this similar issue, and how you can reduce that issue down to the problem, and then find that problem and then solve it, right? That is actually quite a challenge in itself. So having dedicated no AI zones is really important, really important. So reserve part of your work or study to do that. And then also use AI to simulate code reviews. So you write code without asking AI, and then you ask AI to review that code. So you could do this with your no AI zone, right? So in the morning, you write code, you ask AI to help you with that. In the afternoon, you do a no AI zone, you build another feature for that thing, and you're not using AI whatsoever. The following day, or a few hours later, you ask AI to code review the code that you've written without AI. So you're then using AI as a reviewer, which is something that, again, I never had when I was a junior dev. I was never able to have someone to review my code before I got into the industry, right? So this is really powerful because one of the things that I wasn't aware of when I first got into the industry was pull requests, and having other developers look and approve and critique your own code. So having the ability as a junior developer to use AI to do that is really important, really handy, really, really good. And this just sharpens your skills, and it builds habits around writing clean and maintainable code and efficient code, which is crucial for team environments. And again, if AI is reviewing your code and it comes up with a suggestion that you don't understand, then you use that as an opportunity to ask AI why it's done that. And you're asking AI things like, not only can you review my code, but is there a way I can make this more efficient? Is this a way I can make this more performant? Is there a way that I can make this more secure? So that's really, really cool. So it's not all doom and gloom. I know the first part of this talk was all doom and gloom and AI is terrible and it's going to take our jobs and all of this lot. But as a junior developer, you can actually use AI as a superpower, in my opinion. So the next one is to turn AI into a learning tool and not just a shortcut, right? So you're explaining how things work in React. So explain how does state work in React, and do so like I'm 10, do so like I'm 5. Explain it to me like I'm an idiot, right? Because I don't know this, but explain it to me and really go down into the nitty-gritty parts of why this thing is. Give me 5 reasons why Flexbox is different to Grid, okay? Give me 3 ways to solve this problem that I'm facing, but do so with a list of pros and cons, right? What could I be facing in the future if I do this versus doing another thing, right? Or here are 2 solutions. List me out the pros and cons of both of them. Or what could I potentially face in the future if I use this framework over this framework? You know, using AI to ask those kind of questions are really powerful. And again, I never had that. Hey, Bobby, thank you for joining, man. Hope you're well. Hope everybody's well. Hope everybody's having a good weekend, man. This is I'm just chilling with my dogs. Some of them are, well, one of them's gone upstairs. So you're asking AI, you're turning that more into a tool for learning rather than a shortcut for producing code. And then the next one is to use AI to explore career relevant skills. Okay, so for example, you may have seen a lot of job adverts that have all sorts of different skills that they require. So you could ask AI, about DevOps basics. If you're seeing that there are jobs out there that have DevOps as part of their role, you could say, well, what are you could ask AI, tell me about DevOps, tell me about CI/CD. You could also ask for things that are less so about the code, more so about the industry. So talk about accessibility, talk about security, talk about performance and optimization and caching and those different things. Use AI as a means of a way of you leveling up your skills, but without so in producing a project, right? It's more about explain to me what this design architecture pattern means. Explain to me what dependency injection is. Explain to me what polymorphism is. What is the command pattern? How would I, also another thing is, I've written this code in PHP. How may I do this in Python? How may I do this in JavaScript? And then you're using AI to teach yourself how it's done in other ways, and how these methodologies and these terms, what they actually mean and represent. Because you're going to be asked questions in your interview, and those questions will be, what is the singleton pattern? What is dependency injection? What is polymorphism? And so you can actually ask AI, look, create me a mock interview exam or a set of questions. Or I'm going to have an interview for this particular role, and you could list out the role, right? Give me 5 questions that could potentially be asked. So you're using AI as a tool to help you to become employable. And the last thing that I want to just talk about, because my tea is very cold and I want another one. I want to make another one. The last thing I want to talk about is avoiding, we've talked about it a little bit, avoiding the copy-paste confidence. All right, the copy-paste confidence of, I've asked AI this thing, it's come up with this solution, and I am more confident about the solution that AI has given me rather than confident in my own ability to solve the problem itself. So don't always trust AI completely blindly, because that's when bad things happen. And there's also AI hallucinations, or AI could give you bad and outdated information, especially when frameworks changes and you're working on a different version of the framework and all that stuff. So use AI as a suggestion tool, not as a source of truth. Okay, that is the biggest thing I could probably, piece of advice I could give is to use AI as a suggestion, not as a source of truth. Because code evolves, versions evolve, things change, technology changes. AI will not be 100% correct all of the time. And it's at those times that we have to be aware of, that when we read the code that AI produces, we need to go, actually, no, that's wrong. Or be aware that the context that we're giving AI is not the full picture of what we actually need, because we're not giving away business domain logic or anything like that, or the future roadmap of the business. And so we don't have the ability for AI yet to be able to come up with the full end-to-end solution of what we need. Anyway, thank you ever so much for watching. I do appreciate everyone for joining. I really do. Thank you ever so much. This has been great. I'll try and do another one later next week, perhaps. But right now, I need another cup of tea. Thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everybody. Take care. Oh, there is a message. Bear with me a minute. Somewhere I have seen a message. There is a message. How do you get onto the damn messages? I will find a way. I will find a way later. Thank you ever so much for watching. I need a cup of tea. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.